Heidi, thank you for joining me today.
I'm thrilled to be here, Dana. It's a total pleasure. Yeah.
So, I'd love to start with hearing more about your branding journey. How did you come to entrepreneurship? How did you come to doing what you're doing now?
Oh man. So it's a long story, as I figure it is for a lot of people. My story started really, my branding story. I was a floral designer early on out of high school. That was what I decided to do. And then as I started to get a bit older and really become aware of who I am and what I have to offer, and the job was exhausting physically, I realized, oh my goodness, I need to make a big change. And so that was really interesting because I built up a career for 17 years being this one thing, a floral designer. That was my brand, right? Somebody who was creative and could create these amazing things with her hands. And then I made this huge switch, which took a long time to do. Um, and quite honestly, so I was running a business at that time, my own floral company. 2008 happened, the crash of the market, and my business was done in the matter of a day. I had no more business. And so I immediately had to go, okay, what now? And it was actually a real blessing, and in a way, because I wanted to get out of the work I was doing. So, depending on how long of a story you want me to go into, I basically um, I had to reinvent because all I had was a high school education. And here I was 37, 38, and only educated up to high school, which is really not, I don't recommend it to anyone. So I went on a bit of a journey to figure out who I was, which included me hanging out at a homeless shelter for a year, trying to just focus on someone else who needed my ear and not focus on my own self and cry. And that ended up being a huge turning point for me. I was able to really step into this idea that I had a lot to offer people. And starting with people who are in crisis is an amazing place to start because you recognize where you are gifted and where all the major gaps in your helping show up. And I just realized how much I loved it, and I went back to school. And then decided, okay, after another series of events, I can't do this 9 to 5 gig. I had a therapist offer me a job in his office, and I said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to go do this on my own. And here we are. So I started life coaching. And after a few years of doing that, I got really tired of the work didn't feel challenging anymore. And so if you went back, my very first website was Weebly. So it was really basic. I did all of that stuff myself. And then when I realized, okay, life coaching isn't really for me, I changed my brand again and evolved into business coaching, or I'm sorry, coaching for creatives. And when I made that change, I thought, okay, a Weebly website's not really very professional. I need to upgrade to WordPress. Like, that'll be really great. So I took a WordPress course, and I had a connection of mine who did some branding and was just starting out in her business, and she created a logo for me. So I moved really slow, and it's really served me well, quite honestly, moving that slow. So now I have a Squarespace website, and I've evolved again in my business because I really figured out who my ideal client is, who I serve best. Everything's been really a process of tweaking, right? And yeah, I wouldn't change that for a thing.
Well, there's a lot, I think, going on here where this idea of you're figuring out who you want to serve and how you want to serve them, but in real time. And I think a lot of us spend too much time just thinking. And until you're actually doing it, you have no idea if this is going to be the thing that you want to do. So if you had just spent that whole time thinking about, do I want to be a life coach? Do I want to be a business coach? How do I want to fit in? You may have never even started.
Whew, for sure. I mean, that the blessings of my skill set are that I love being in scrappy startup mode. So tweaking and testing and just throwing something out there, not throwing to all abandon and going, oh, I'm just going to put a piece of crap out there, but certainly knowing where I'm at and starting there. And it helps when there's not really a lot of people watching you.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Exactly.
right. I remember it feeling paralyzing because I thought people cared. Nobody cared except me. Right. And so it was actually a really amazing time to do that. And I'm still doing that. I mean, I suppose people are watching on a greater scale, but again, I'm really interested in the people who are engaging with what I'm putting out there, not who's watching. Right.
And you seem really in tune with what you want. So you knew you were done with floral design. I would expect that even in the worst economy, if that was where the fire was, if you had a fire for it, that you would be able to rebuild. But you knew that you were done. And then you knew that you didn't want the 9 to 5. And you knew that you weren't being challenged by life coaching. So it seems like you have a really good take on what drives you and what motivates you. How much do you let your clients, or I guess allow space for your clients to dictate some of what you do? So if people are if your clients are seeking certain things, you allow yourself to follow their interests?
Yeah, 1000%. Right. I feel like my job is to create this beautiful container that is safe and challenging and leaves lots of room for experimentation. And I really want my clients to lead the way in terms of like, this is what I want, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, and to just be invited into that collaboration, to speak into it and guide and lead sometimes and follow other times. And because as much as like part of my brand is helping people ask like an expert, I don't assume that I'm the expert of everything, and especially not the expert of you. I very much I really feel like a big part of my gifting is really being able to listen to my client and take in all of the information and just reflect it back like a mirror, constantly bring it back, because there's something so powerful about hearing our words back from someone else, right? It's just, you can't beat it. And it's not one of those flashy skills, right? But it's incredibly important. We all need it.
So what do you see? I recorded an episode that's going to be airing later about the role of a coach and some misconceptions about coaches in our current online entrepreneur climate. What do you see as the real role of a coach? When you are hired on by somebody, what do you view as your purpose in that relationship? And then also, what are some things people should look for and stay away from when it comes to hiring a coach?
Yeah. Ooh, that's something I'm sure we could talk about for a long time. But I think the first thing that came to my mind, really, my job is to model, especially based on where my clients are at. They really need somebody to model. Like many of my clients have trouble saying a strong no, or asking and being really specific about what they need. And so often, my clients will share something in a Google Doc with me, and I will help tweak their language so that what they're doing is they're speaking up with authority, which my clients tend to be challenged with. A lot of us are. So yeah, so very much see my job as being somebody who models really, hopefully strong leadership, and creates a container for my client to just be challenged and to see themselves and to grow and change and cry and pull their hair out and want to quit, but stay with it, right? So there's so much of my soft skills, and of many coaches, that's what's really required, is a lot of the soft skills. But in terms of what to look out for, someone who wants to sell you a plan or a blueprint or a get rich quick scheme, any of those words and those ways of being, I just run for the hills. I can't Yeah, there's just been, I find so many, and even in new coaches who are trying to sell what they've learned, what's worked for them. I wouldn't want you to follow my path. Not that it was terrible, but I really feel like one of the best things I can provide my clients, which you've picked up on, is my ability to really hone in on my own awareness of what I want. And I desperately want that for all people. Just know what you want and who you are and keep following that gut feeling, right? It sounds, I don't care how it sounds to people. I think it's true. If you don't really have a sense for what you want and who you are, all of the decisions we make are going to be so, well, it's going to create more decisions and more messiness and more challenges, right?
Yo, I fully agree. I talk to a lot of people and they're like, my goal is to, add another zero to the end of my bank account. I'm like, but why? Like, and to what end? And if it's because, you need to get out of debt and that's the amount of money you need and to feel good about supporting your family or whatever your expenses are, I understand that. But I think sometimes what they really want is something that's an external influence. It's not really about the money, it's actually about something else. And so, like, let's focus on the thing that you actually want versus just 10xing your mailing list or 10xing your revenue or whatever that is.
Oh man, yeah, that's another catchphrase that I can't stand. I mean, it's not like I haven't used it, but I found that the marketers who are looking for a quick win for a client or just to grab their money, it's like 10x this and 20x that, and it's just all these flashy numbers. And for me, growth has not happened that way. It's not like I'm 10xing anything. So,
well, and if you do, it can often lead to more problems in many ways. So like I remember there was a year I was focusing all on newsletter growth. I was doing lots of webinars, lots of Facebook ads, lots of social media promotion. And sure enough, I over doubled my mailing list. But what happened was our open rates were going down and we didn't see those conversions. And so I was like, okay, well, what's the point of having this mailing list if people are not reading it, if they're not becoming clients or customers or whatever that may be? And so now it's been a pivot to focus on a very specific audience in a very organic way, which is slower, but our open rates are like at 45%.
Wow, nice.
Right? Like the conversion rates are going up and it feels better. Our mailing list we comb through our mailing list quite frequently if people are not engaging. I think it's set to like 6 months. They get a re-engagement campaign and then they're automatically departed. They automatically get unsubscribed. So all the people who aren't engaging automatically go off. And so our mailing list stays around, I think, 3,000 to 3,500, but the open rates continue to increase.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's what you really want. You want to connect with people. It's not just about vanity metrics.
Yeah. And to me, that's a conscious business owner.
I'm trying. I try to be.
Well, clearly you are. I mean, it's beautiful, right?
And I also think this idea of mirroring back this idea of the role of being the mirror and offering that feedback, because I do believe that most of us do know what we want. We just have to have someone to help pull it out of us or coach our way along to get to that point and get on board with that. And so I like this idea of your role being the person on the shoulder asking the question, like, is that really what you want? Why do you want that? Why are you doing that? And getting us to get to what we really need.
Right. Yeah. It's so not about me. That's one of my favorite parts of this work, that it's just really not. I'm able to ask and say and do things like in my marketing that I would never do as a human being, not because it's bad, but because it's quite bold. And it's not about me. My marketing is about my client, right? Just like my client work is about the client. And so I think that's maybe one of the things that drives me crazy. That's a myth that I can't stand, is that to be an effective coach, you need to be this flashy, spotlighty, it's all about me. Look at me, look at my money, look at my privilege. I don't know, whatever, right? Look at all of my things and how smart and how much of a guru I am. And it's like, no,
So
I can't relate to that.
so there's two things that came up for me when you said that. I'm wondering how much, because I agree. And I think I started as a publicist. And so as a publicist,
Mm.
our role was to get our clients on stages in front of cameras. Like I did not want to be in front of the camera. I had no desire to be at the front in the mix of things. And so I'm wondering if you felt any challenges or trepidation when it does come to showing up in terms of your own marketing and your own promotion. Is that challenging?
Massively. Yeah. I mean, that's why I love this idea that it isn't really about me. I get to show up and really meet my clients, and speak to their pain and their message and what they need from me. If it had to be all about me, I couldn't do it. Well, that's not true. Maybe I'm sure I could find it in me somewhere to do that. But I just know myself, and I know I need more than just the spotlight on me. I'm an introvert. And so that's why I love one-on-one work, because it's not in front of a camera.
Mm-hmm.
Not for the world to hear. It's a very intimate, private, important, powerful conversations. And so for me, anyways, it's not about, I didn't get into this work so that I could be flashing myself all over Instagram and Facebook and have a billboard, so yeah, it's a challenge as I grow my business, having to be, more forward facing and have people really see me. That's something I'll continue to be challenged with. But I think it's an important part of the growth, because my clients are going through the same thing, right? If I wasn't challenged, I would have a harder time supporting them, right? I'd be like, get over yourself. I would never say that. However, I think it is important to be in touch with how it feels to be on the other end of things, right?
Oh, I 100% agree. I don't think you need to be in your client's shoes in order to be effective, but I do think it can make you understand and empathize in a way that you can't always if you haven't. I remember when my book came out, and I had been working with authors to help them promote their books. And my book came out, and I was on the road, and I had the one stop that had 4 people in the audience. And I'm at this like roadside hotel in Toledo, Ohio. And like nothing about this is feeling good. And I earned a greater respect of what it's like when you have those types of events, how draining it is, how disheartening it is. How you're just like, just want to go home, and how tiring also it is when you are doing, driving or flying from one city to another. It made us way more aware of when we're setting our authors up, or when they are feeling challenged or grumpy on the road, to come with a little bit more compassion and more empathy for them.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that's so important. I agree with you. You don't have to have had the exact experience, but certainly when you do, it just makes you so effective.
So how are you overcoming these obstacles? So you say you are challenged to get in front of the camera and show up. What are some ways, some techniques you are using to overcome that challenge?
Yeah. So I've tried a lot of things, to be honest, because I am quite an introvert. I don't feel like speaking in a public way is at all my natural way of being. And so I hired a coach at one point to help me, because I knew I love Instagram. I knew I needed to be getting on stories and camera. And that was really helpful. That was incredibly helpful for me. And like I said, I had, very few followers at the time, which was a really great place for me to experiment. And so what I've found with showing up on camera is the same for your business. It's just, you got to show up and be awful and messy and very imperfect. And as you do that, you just are going to get better, just because you're showing up and practicing. And so that's what I'm trying to bring to every sort of place where I need to really show up that feels a little uncomfortable. And then I think the other thing that's really helped is knowing my clients, knowing what they need to hear, having a message, positioning, all of those sort of business trappings that are incredibly important to the process, because then I have a message and something to really stand behind. In the early days, when you're struggling to create your message, that's so brutal, right? Because you don't have fully formed ideas yet. And the more my ideas are fully formed, the more I have a message and offerings and all of that, it's gotten so much easier.
Well, and I think you have really, your website and your social media presence, you have a really great messaging. So I do want to come back to that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious though, with Instagram specifically, what are you doing differently, or what is your strategy when it comes to building authority and growing your following on Instagram?
It's changed so much over the time I've been on Instagram, and I've changed a lot. But I would say the biggest or the most exciting and interesting change that has happened for me on Instagram is I was really struggling with, okay, I'm a coach. How do I show what I do on Instagram stories? Because it's a visual platform, how the heck am I going to do that? And out of that pain, which felt like a really big pain at the time, I looked at the client work that I was doing, and I realized I'm often helping my clients with their intake forms. What questions should they ask? What structure? What does it look like? What am I trying to do with this intake form to make it work for my business? And I realized, oh my gosh, that's what I need to show on Instagram. And so now I have a weekly feature on Instagram stories that's visual, where I'm taking screenshots of people's actual intake forms on Instagram, and I'm making comments and showing them what people could be doing differently to make their intake form saleable, relational, effective. And that's just been, people come to watch my intake reviews and they won't see my other content, because their Wednesday is the day they show up, and I get engagement and comments, and I'm building up my reputation as an intake form expert. So that's been huge for me. I highly recommend that people find a way to show your work. And you don't have to be a photographer. I'm proof. You don't have to be a photographer with amazing images, right?
So are you using your clients' intake forms for those, or are you using just picking random people, or people submitting to you?
So when I first started, I had people submit their forms to me, brave souls. I would give them credit, like they would be promoted in my stories. And I did maybe, I don't know, five or six of them. And I realized I don't feel like I can be as honest as I want to be, or give as much, not even because I was honest, but how can I give really great value? And when I know these people, something just doesn't feel like I can really unleash. Not like I'm being nasty, but I didn't want to feel like I was tied to anyone's interests but my own, to be honest. I felt like the people who were coming to see my intake reviews would get a much better review. And so when people ask me now, can I be featured on your review? I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is a boundary I have to hold strong to for the integrity of the work. So that's kind of how I've worked it. I can't even remember what your question was now. Sorry.
No, it was exactly that. It was asking about how you chose, if they were anonymous or submitted, or your clients. So how has this led? So you've been doing this consistently, and I do believe consistency breeds legitimacy.
Yes.
What results have you seen? What changes have you seen after doing this consistently for so long?
Yeah. So, silly vanity metrics, like my Instagram followers are going up. I'm having people refer clients to me just based on watching my reviews. I'm getting clients. I'm being seen as an expert. Opportunities are coming my way that I just could not have. I wouldn't have made it up in my head. Like, this is why I'm going to do this intake review thing, which takes me a significant amount of time every week. Just so that I can have this end result. Like, it's been amazing. It's been so great for my business, profit, all of it, right? Visibility. Yeah.
Well, I love that you're focusing on doing one thing really well and having that source all of your business, versus saying, okay, I have to do this, but then I have to do 50 different things. And so doing this one thing well that I would argue you're probably seeing better results than if you were doing 10 things mediocre.
Yeah, 1000%. And that tends to be who I am as a person. Like I want to go deep with someone in a one-on-one client relationship. I want to go deep on my intake forms. I want, right, focus, specificity, expertise is super important to me. And so, yeah, it's great that that's being communicated in how I show up and in my consistency, right?
So just some quickie tips for those of us who do have intake forms. I don't have one. Now I'm like, ooh, maybe that's the first thing you should do. I should do. Um, but what are some things that for those people who have intake forms that tips and taboos, do's and don'ts?
Well, I mean, I know that this episode isn't going to air right away. However, it very much inspired me to look up book coaches for their intake review or intake forms. And I had a very hard time on Instagram finding any intake forms. I found one, I looked at, I think 15. Wow. Yes. Which that's like, I have not, I look at different expertise or different specialties each week to find, okay, who's going to be a really great review this week? And I have not run into this problem until I started looking up book coaches. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It just surprised me.
I think that I guess when we think about an intake form, we're thinking of like the initial form that they fill out if they're interested in getting a consult or interested in maybe hiring you, and it's that form they fill out.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
So I guess I have an intake form. It's a contact form. And if it's, are you an author seeking publicity services, you check it and it drops down, but it's all synopsis, publisher, publication date, URL, like very nuts and bolts.
Right.
And so yeah, I guess, and then we have a form that when we have when we get I get that form filled out, that inquiry. If it's a quality lead, I schedule a call. Yep. If it's not, they get a different response. And then if we move forward, I read the book, do the proposal. If they say yes, then they get another form to fill out, but that's more like contact information,
right?
Image, headshot, that sort of thing. So I guess that would be the question is like, do you feel that, like, what kinds of things would you do above and beyond that would help, ensure more quality leads? I assume that that's the reason you want a more robust intake form.
Yes, absolutely. So number one reason would be to screen. You're looking for red flags. You are also looking for, so every client group has its own sort of way it distinguishes itself. Sorry, I'm having trouble saying that. So for example, my clients, I can tell if you're my client based on how much information you give me to my intake questions. If you give me a lot of, I feel this is what it looks like, and it's a decent answer in terms of like a paragraph, you're probably my client. You've got a lot to say. And there's some red flags that people will show. So for example, if somebody writes one sentence and it's not quality information, you're not my client. I can tell already. I can get back to you and give you a resource and send you on your way. So it saves me a lot of time. Here's the other amazing part of this is it's all marketing language, because it's my ideal, or it's mostly my ideal clients' pain language, right? Here's the problem I am having, Heidi. How do I solve this thing? And it's in their own language. So I'm looking at all the intake forms that come in and I'm putting their language into buckets so that I can then go use it in my marketing and my website copy so I understand my clients. Like it's free. I feel like I'm passionate about this. I feel like when I'm offering a free discovery call, your payment to me is your answers, because I can then go use them. It informs how I do business. So that's why I feel really strongly about, if you ask the right questions, you're going to get amazing marketing language, and it's gold.
I completely agree. We use that when I launched our new membership site. That was exactly, I took all of the follow-ups, inquiries that we had gotten and looked through I did searches for struggling, challenge. I just figured out what the real, and then get to the heart of what they're feeling.
Yep.
And it's
brilliant.
and it's an interesting thing that you said, because I can think back to our clients who were that one sentence, like, I want to hire a publicist. Here's my URL. Let me know if we're interested.
Yep.
And that it speaks to how they work too. Not saying it's bad or good. We can deal with a lot of different personalities, but it speaks, I think that the amount that they write speaks volumes.
Yes, I feel like how someone shows up on the intake form is how they show up for the sales conversation, is how they show up for the relationship. And so that's why I put so much weight on the intake form, because like you said, I can tell what kind of client they're going to be by how they answer the questions. So I love it. I love that you use Airtable as well. And so I can tell that that you're capturing certain bits of information and they're going in different places. And I love that. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I've been doing, my goal for this year has been to track where people find me and the relationship between the quality of the leads and where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And
great.
I thought I had it down, and then we had 4 new clients that debunked my theory. So now we're back to square one. I had written a whole blog post about how I don't want to rank on Google because all the Google referrals are terrible. And sure enough, the last 4 clients, well, we've signed 3, and I think we're signing the next one is they found me on Google. So now I'm like, well, I don't know anymore. But I can also see patterns about, how just, if we have a decline in new leads or decline in quality leads, who the refers are. We have tags for each referrer. So like I can see reminding me to cultivate those relationships with those referrers. Yes, I love data. I find it very relaxing to look through data.
I'm with you. I never would have thought that would have been something that would interest me so much. But certainly the social worker in me came out when I start looking at my client data, for sure.
So let's talk about your messaging.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that jumped out on your brand messaging on your website was this idea of going from cutthroat to caring, right? Like you're really weeding out your not ideal client. You don't want the personalities who are cutthroat. You want the more caring individuals. How intentional was that? Was that something that evolved over time? And what does those caring individuals, what does that look like in a typical client?
Yeah, it definitely has evolved, right? Just like everything in my business. So I realized, I looked at all my clients' language and their intake forms, and I looked at what kind of clients they were, and also the things that I was helping them, the challenges I was helping them manage in coaching, what they were needing to step into. And I found that the clients I loved working with that were a great fit were the nicest people on the planet, who were experts in their area of specialization. They were really good at what they did, but where they really struggled was to ask like an expert, to say no like an expert, to like that client communication piece, boundaries, how they would show up for their clients. Because I work with service-based business owners, right? And so that's where this idea of really speaking to, I don't want cutthroat people. I want people who care about their people. Then we're speaking the same language. And so I also looked at, I collect my clients' Myers-Briggs type and their Enneagram type in their intake. And so I could also assess what that means about who's coming to me, right? And so that's built right into my brand.
Are all your clients a certain Enneagram or Myers-Briggs?
In the Enneagram, my clients are almost exclusively, but not entirely, in the heart center, which is 2, 3s, and 4s on the Enneagram. However, that's starting to change. I'm noticing with my intake reviews, I'm getting different people on the Enneagram who are the opposite. Not that they're not caring, but they're not as intuitive. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
No, but that's important, how your marketing strategy now is shifting
Yeah.
Therefore, you're opening up to a new client base, and it's up to you to evaluate whether or not you want to pursue that client base. And if the answer is no, then you have to identify that pattern of, okay, Instagram's feeding me more. The people who are attracted to this are
Yeah.
more like thinkers versus feelers, and do I
Exactly.
want to work with thinkers versus feelers?
Yeah. Yep. That's, you summed it up exactly. That's exactly what's happening, because feelers love my website. They feel seen and heard, or and understood. But thinkers really want to rely on my relational side. They, especially for intake, because I have this cross section between sales and relational ways of being, right? And so for them, that's a really attractive combo.
And what's your Myers-Briggs?
Mine or my client?
What's your both?
My Myers-Briggs is INFP.
Okay.
But my clients, yeah, so my clients tend to be, for a while there, it was exclusively INFJs to the nth degree. Some INFPs, ENFPs, but yeah, the majority for sure was INFJs. But again, that's starting to shift a little and getting some T's into the mix, which is really interesting for me. I love it.
Yeah, having that consistent, like the intuitive and feeling as the consistent.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's also interesting how I was a consistent INFJ for a very long time. And then the more I practice, I still identify as an introvert. I don't think this is right. But then I had taken a test. I take them maybe every 6 months, and I was an E. And I was just like, what? That's not true. But it was like 54%. It was like very in the middle. But it's interesting how also the more you evolve and the more you evolve and changes in your business, the personality profiles probably also change.
Yeah, I think when you're in business, you grow like there's like nobody's business, right? You have to really lean into some places that you never would have developed before, so
Yeah.
I totally get why that would change for you.
I like it. Well, I think it's interesting though that you're able to see those patterns. I think that with the personality test or the Enneagram, sometimes you don't want to put a label on the person. You want to be open to how they're showing up. And sometimes if we know about them, we answer questions in a certain way, and there's bias. But I think just using it as a tool to identify your demographic or your psychographic for your ideal clients, I think is really, really important.
It's been amazing for me. Yeah, it's been great.
So you talk a lot about customer experience, or CX, which I find very interesting and fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach CX for yourself and with your clients, and maybe some guidance on how service providers can improve theirs?
Yeah, I think it's because I'm a huge relationship builder, and that whole relational way of being is so important to me. And so to me, that's a no-brainer when it comes to client experience, right? So really getting into the head of my client, what do they need to feel, especially for the intake form, safe to answer questions that are triggering and confidential and bring up all of the things? How can I ask in a way? I see this a lot. People asking questions that make the person answering feel like they are auditioning to work with you. That drives me to distraction. For so many reasons. And so when I'm coming at client experience, it's like, I'm really looking at how does this make my potential client feel when they're answering questions, when they're doing this task, when they're whatever they're needing to do to help me, like provide me with information. Am I playing to their strengths? Where are there places where I can intentionally push them a little bit to see what happens? So for example, a very specific example, in my sales conversations, I make sure that I let my potential clients know this is going to be hard. And I give them some homework to show me how they show up. Because how someone shows up on the initial sales conversation can really change over a few days or a week, right? Mm-hmm. And so if I can give someone some homework, I'm better going to be able to see how their learning style, their processing style, how they show up for things. So yeah, all of that to me comes into play. I'm very intentional about my client experience, and for different reasons and at different places in the whole client experience. So they're the customer journey, right?
Yeah. So once they become your client, and then what are some touch points that you have to ensure that they're, like, as I remember, there's like the part where they are introduced to you, they become familiar, they trust you. I'm doing a bell curve if you're listening. And then at the top, they sign on with you.
Yeah.
And then there's also this little dip of like a buyer's remorse dip of all of a sudden they're getting nervous or unsure, and then you have to get them back up. And so what are some things that you notice in some ways that you work with your clients and after they say, yes, let's do it, be my coach?
Yeah. One of the ways I really like to keep my people engaged and encourage them to be engaged and to not leave it all on me, to be their everything, is I mean, it's so simple. It's just Google Docs, a Google folder with some Google Docs. And I have just created pages that allow my clients, okay, here, this page is for this challenge or problem. It's blank because it's your place to fill it out. My clients often need a space to tweak and test. And knowing that I'm going to be in there and I can tag certain things and show them, hey, like, this feels a little bit weird to me. Does this feel weird to you? That's a huge, my clients tend to really work well with that Google Docs system. And, a lot of people these days have Voxer, right? That's one of the things that they offer. I don't offer that because for my own sake, for boundaries purposes, I know that I wouldn't get anything done, for one. And also, when I can see something in a Google Doc, I can also take time to think about it and answer in a way that really works for how I process and how I can show up for my clients. And so that was an easy way for me to answer that question for people. Like, here's my boundary. And here's why I do it. And it's for your benefit, right? Mm-hmm. I want a coach who's engaged in answering me thoughtfully and not just like, and I'm not saying that Voxer is an unconscious thing. Mm-hmm. For me, it doesn't work, right?
I agree. I think I was laughing at I was telling somebody that my style is I like meeting with people in person. I find it very rewarding. But if we're talking strategy or we're talking about like marketing tactics or techniques or things, there's a lot. We're going to be sitting together in silence for quite some time because I need to think about these things. Yep. And I don't answer email. I think my clients all know that I'm very intentional with email answering. I'm not going to just, unless it's literally like, when is the pub date on this book? And I could just cut it off. Like, if it's something, right, I have questions about this, I'm going to answer at my computer. I'm going to read your email. I'm going to let it sit for a second, and then I'm going to respond. And if we're talking in person, I may need to just sit for a second and like let my wheels spin before I just come at you with an answer. Because I think that we're sometimes so focused on being responsive and being available when no client I've ever had is like, wow, she was so available. She right. delivered really great perspective and really great work product. That's what they're excited about. So 1000%.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's good that you acknowledge that boundary, but there's other people who love to shoot off the hip and feel that that's, when I say like, I'll write them a long email. One of my friends like loves sending me voice memos. Like, she loves talking.
Yes.
I'll write back like this huge long email or like this long text because I'm more written than speaking. Yeah. And everyone has their preferences.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I make sure that my clients know that about me before they start to work with me, right? If you need to do long voice messages to me and you want me to return that, that's not something I can deliver on, right?
Yep. 100%. Oh. So I'd love to hear just kind of what you're looking at next. So, your marketing is working right now. You're loving your clients. Is there anything on the horizon that you're interested in testing, experimenting, or iterating?
Well, I mean, right now I'm in the middle of bringing my intake forms further into my whole marketing process in terms of, getting an offering up on my website, getting an email list based on the intake form reviews. So that whole machine is starting to really turn. but it's not showing up on my website yet. So that's really where I'm moving, and what I'm really looking forward to, because I'm just loving this new offering that I've discovered.
Yeah. It goes back to following your clients' curiosities and finding out identifying those patterns and paying attention to the patterns, and then just turning the volume up on it.
Yes, beautiful. I love it. I love exactly how you just said that. That's how I operate. You've got my number.
So by the time this airs, you may have this offering up on your website, but in the meantime, regardless, you can find more at heiditaylor.ca, Canada, and we will link to all this in the show notes, in addition to Airtable and some of those other resources, and your Instagram handle, so people can tune in every Wednesday. Heidi, thank you so much for joining me today.
An amazing, awesome conversation, Dana. Thank you.